my friend, and welcome to the study. I'm so glad you're here, because today I've made a wonderful Brian Jake's Redwall Autumn Feast for us, using the Redwall Cookbook. So I'll be reading a little bit of Brian Jake's Redwall anecdotes from the cookbook, and we'll be having some of the treats I've made for us. The first day of autumn is said to be when the angle of the sun on the earth in its orbit means that the dew on the grass stays on through the morning and doesn't burn off by mid-morning. This happens at different times depending on where you live. But here in the British Isles, which is a climate that seems very similar to that in the Redwall stories, this happens late August to late September. So we can say that autumn is now beginning, and it was always a time for the Redwall creatures to have feasts from their harvest, to come together, to enjoy each other's company in the Great Hall at Redwall. So here I have a little felt badger. He has a little knit jumper and a little felt rucksack, and he's been out gathering nuts and goodies for the autumn feast. He's probably from Salamanderstone. I also have some honey. Honey dipper. And some walnuts, hazelnuts, and I've added some sugared stem ginger for some spice. So I've used mostly ingredients that I think the Redwall creatures would have had available to them as I went through these recipes and modified them slightly. So to start with, let's have some October ale. This one, we're just going to have straight Fentimans ginger beer. this old house. And here is our loam hedge nut bread. You can see it has all kinds of nuts. I put dates and some berries, hazelnuts, but I also used some pistachios and almonds, and of course I think the dates and Brazil nuts that these creatures might not have been able to find unless they traded with some places farther to the south. So for our first course here, let's put some honey on our loam hedge nut bread. There's our first course. I hope you can't hear my noisy neighbors. With their power tools and hammers. We're going to relax with Redwall and pretend that they are not there. Here we have a mouse, possibly an abbot, looking from one of the towers in towards Redwall and beyond into the mossflower woods. And there you can see some trees in their autumn colors, some migrating birds in the golden sky, possibly an animal. And there's the river. And there's smoke coming from maybe the kitchens, maybe the great hall. I saw the day dawn silent grey as sunrise mist turned gold. Dame Autumn glided calmly in through summertime grown old, whilst apples ripe on orchard boughs dropped to the wearied grass, and dead leaves rustled to and fro to let small breezes pass. We harvested the oats and rye, our barley and good wheat, leaving birds ere they flew south to glean all they could eat. At harvest time in autumn tide, dewy tears drip from the eaves, sad legacy of summer days, are crimson, amber, russet leaves. So as the days begin to grow shorter, and all of the trees color in their evening splendor, Matimeo, son of Matthias and Cornflower, gathered his warm cloak about him and scanned the twilit orchard. Trees and bushes stood bare and forlorn, their fruits harvested by Redwallers, their dead leaves swept to the ground by autumnal breezes. The young mouse peered into the gathering gloom, his paws swishing through the leafy carpet as he paced to and fro. Matimeo took his duties seriously. The father abbot had asked him to bring all the dibbuns indoors. There's a mouse in his cloak in the orchard, and Redwall in the distance, and the misty autumn. Though his voice still squeaked a bit, Matimeo tried to make it sound deeper as he called out sternly, "All dibbuns indoors, right away, please." There followed a chorus of infant giggles and a gruff mole babe's reply, "Us'n's bain't yours, sir." Matimeo could not help smiling to himself. He could recognize Bungo, the ringleader, anywhere. The dibbuns are the young animals, and they're always getting into trouble. But the animals at Redwall Abbey are very tolerant with them, and they bring them up well. "I know it's you, Bungo. Come on out and bring those other villains with you right now." And there are the dibbuns, hurrying in for the autumn feast. There's a little, possibly a baby rabbit, a little mouse, a hedgehog, another rabbit, possibly a big fat vole and a hedgehog, and the little mouse has a little soft toy rabbit, and the wind is blowing the leaves. Wind drifted heaps of leaves, rustled and shook with merriment as Bungo called back to him, "Oi, Dolly, Bungo Bee's gone, and all he little villains too. There be's only us leaves, yer." Matimeo turned away from the quivering leaf heaps and shrugged as he strode from the orchard. "Well, I'm going inside. All you leaves can stay out here in the dark. That's the place for old dead leaves, out in the dark and cold for the night." A little hogmaid's voice answered, trembling with dismay, "Some of us leaves want to go back inside of the abbey." Matimeo laughed and shook his head. "Oh no, I'd only have to sweep 'em back out again. Good night, little leaves. I'll think of you when I'm down in Cavern Hole at the Autumn Harvest Home Feast." Poor leaves out in the dark orchard, trying to hide from the big bad boogie beast. Matimeo was suddenly knocked flat by a stampede of dibbuns, shrieking and shouting as they fled from the orchard. And there is Cavern Hole, under the great hall, where the animals have the feast. They've lit lanterns and put some autumn decorations. There are mice and voles, a hare, an otter, hedgehogs, squirrels, bunnies, moles, and rabbits. Down in Cavern Hole, the lanterns glowed warmly around a huge buffet table, which was piled high with magnificent food as if by magic. Cavern suddenly filled with abbey babes, their eyes still wide with fright. The Father Abbot chuckled as he sat down next to Cornflower. "Isn't it nice to see our dibbuns right on time? Young Matameo has done a good job. There's not one of them missing." Lady Cornflower clapped a paw to her mouth, stifling laughter at the sight of her son, Matameo. Matameo looked slightly dazed as he was led in by Bungo, the mole babe, brushed off some leaves clinging to the young mouse's cloak. Bungo climbed up on Cornflower's lap and whispered solemnly to her, "I bringed your son home, ma'am. He felled over any leaves." Cornflower stroked the tiny mole's velvety head. "That was a very kind thing to do, thank you, Bungo." The mole babe tugged his snout respectively. "My pleasure, ma'am." The entire chamber fell silent as the abbot said grace. "Slumber long, you autumn earth, covered by your leaves. Sleep on for the harvest that you'd gave. We thank you, every one." Every beast applauded, and Formal started the proceedings by plunging his ladle into a large, steaming cauldron. Cornflower smiled at the look of joy on Bungo's face. "Do you like deeper-than-ever turnip and tater and beetroot pie, Bungo?" The mole babe scrambled from her lap, doing a little dance of excitement. "Poor I, ma'am. There bean't nothing like it, 'specially when he Formal be's the cooker. I wonder as how he makes it." Cornflower winked secretly at the mole babe. "Why don't you go and ask him?" A line of Redwallers had formed, all holding their bowls and basins to be filled. Formal nodded affably to Bungo. "He come to help, boy. Licky, sir." "There's the little sir, the little babe, the mole babe." All the moles have a certain accent in Redwall, as well as the sparrows, and of course the hares and the badgers. Bungo tugged his snout and climbed up beside the mole leader. He began passing Formal some bowls to fill. "Serpently, sir, I'll help ye, if any tells I how to be make any good deeper-than-ever pie." Formal chuckled. "That be's a for bargain, little un, but don't he fall in yon pot, or I'll serve a be's oop to summer beast. Yoros he makes it. Listen careful now." So this is our mole's favorite deeper-than-ever turnip and tater and beetroot pie. It has potatoes, carrots, turnips, salt and pepper, a little bit of cheese, and it says pickled beets. For this pie, I combined it with the bell ringers we ward, roast roots, and baked spuds, which is also turnips, parsnips, carrots. Now for the second course. I've made something not in the book. This is a tea drink, and it's drunk warm. It's made with orange juice, lemon juice, garnished it with an orange peel. For the main, I've made moles, beetroot pie. I've modified it a bit and tried to use some of the ingredients that the creatures at Redwall would have had. So I've kind of combined those two recipes. I've put in chestnuts, beetroot, carrot, a little bit of ginger. I don't know if the creatures would have had ginger, but I think ginger tastes nice. Some shallots, mushrooms of the forest, buttons, chanterelle. I've also used some parsnip and celeriac, and I've topped it with breaded potato. Ambrose Spike had his best barrel of October ale on a trestle. He served Tim Churchmouse with a foaming beakerful. Drink hearty, Tim, nothing like a good old October ale to wet your whistle. 'Tis the best I've brewed in many a season. Tim took a long, slow sup. Ah, that's the stuff to keep my paws strong for tolling the Redwall bells. I suppose it's a secret how you make it, eh, Ambrose? The cellar hog hitched up his heavy apron. There are usually hedgehogs in Redwall's kitchens and cellars. You're a good and clever bell ringer, Tim, and a fair cook by my reckoning. Tell you what, I'll do you trade. See that tasty-looking dish you cooked, that'n on the table yonder. Tim eyed his creation proudly. Aye, that's my special bell ringer's reward, I call it. Would you like me to fetch you a plate of it? Ambrose nodded. I'd be pleased if you did. Then, if you tell me how you made it, I'll give you my October ale recipe. How does that sound to ye? Tim took Ambrose's sturdy paw. I'd call that a good offer. And there is Brian Jake's recipe for October ale. It calls for grape juice and ginger beer. But I've just used ginger beer because it's perfect as it is. In fact, I think we should have some more. Constance Badgermum and Sister Pansy watched Tim and Ambrose go sit on the stairs where they ate and drank. There's Constance. And some mice and a mole and a baby mouse, a dibbun. mouse, the cellar hog. They were whispering to one another between mouthfuls and swigs. Pansy chuckled. Look at those two exchanging secret recipes. Constance raised her eyebrows. I'm surprised that Ambrose Spike would tell any of his recipes to another beast. Pansy shrugged. Fair exchange is no robbery, they say. Shall we move closer and listen in on them? Constance looked shocked at the suggestion, but she could not hide the mischievous twinkle in her eyes. Yes, let's. Tim had finished imparting his recipe to Ambrose. The crafty cellar hog glimpsed Constance and Pansy hovering close, so he winked at Tim and raised his voice a touch. First I gets a barrel of muddy rainwater, then I soaks my apron in it for a day or two. Next I gets all the vegetable peelings from Friar Hugo, the old mouldy ones. Now you've got to stir 'em in with a few pawfuls of wild garlic. Constance and Pansy both pulled faces at each other and sidled off huffily. Ambrose waited until they were out of earshot. Oh, that'll teach 'em to earwig on my recipes. Right, Tim, mate. Listen now, these are the real instructions. And there it is. Combine the grape juice and sugar and ginger beer and serve chilled. What we're going to have with that is, of course, the Loamedge Legacy Nut Bread. Let's see how these recipes come about. Basil Staghare and his nephew Tom Scoff were demolishing a tray of crispy biscuits between them. Friar Hugo drifted over and sat by them. I see that you're both enjoying my autumn oat favorites. Tom Scoff nodded briefly, speaking as he continued eating. Jolly tasty, crunch. Just the stuff to keep the troops, Nunky Baz? Basil tweaked his cheeky nephew's ear. I'll feed you to the bloomin' troops if you call me that again, young pounder. But he's right, Friar. Your biscuits are eminently munchable, sir. Even if I do say so myself, what? Hugo was not one to mince words. He came right to the point. And what, may I ask, did you contribute to our autumn harvest home feast this evening? Basil twitched his nose in the direction of Hugo's bowl. Oh, nothing really, just that stuff you appear to be scoffing. Enjoying it, are you, old lad? Hugo was taken aback. You made this delicious mixture of berries and nuts. Well, I am surprised. Tom Scoff left off stuffing himself for a moment. Don't know why, old chap. My Uncle Basil, sir, is a pretty good grub slinger. He used to make this when he was an officer cook with the 67th Paw-and-Mouth Long Patrol. Calls it Hare's Haversack Crumble. Hugo shook his head in amazement. Hare's Haversack Crumble. Basil looked dreamily as he recalled his old regimental days. Ah, yes, old chap. Used to call it that because it came to bits in the haversacks, us being on the march all day. We used to pinch it out of one another's haversacks. Don't you know, old Colonel Puffscott always said it tasted better like that. Hugo gave the hare a crafty wink. No chance I could pinch the recipe from you, is there? Basil gestured over towards Ambrose and Tim. I'll swap recipes with you, old scout. Seems to be the done thing at this feast, what? Hugo gnawed on his lip. He was not fond of giving away his friar's secrets. Basil grinned roguishly at him. You pinch my recipe, and I'll pinch yours. Honor among blinkin' pinchers. Shake. Hugo paused a moment, then stuck out his paws. Shake. That's why we have the recipes for autumn oat favorites. This one has butter, brown sugar, golden syrup, oats, flour, coconut, which I don't think many of the Redwallers would have had. Maybe the odd one from some traveling beast, and baking soda, and hare's haversack crumble, kind of like slices or possibly granola, frozen blueberries, blackberries, and sugar. And the topping, we have flour, butter, cinnamon, salt, brown sugar, chopped hazelnuts or pecans, and custard sauce. And I think the Redwallers like meadow cream. Rosie Spike, finding Matthias in a quiet corner, sat down by him, twiddling her spikes. Matthias smiled at her. Something I can do for you, Mom. Rosie sighed. Look at 'em all chattering away and swapping favorite recipes. No beasts asked to exchange recipes with me, though. Always gallant, Matthias patted his friend's paw. Well now, if you like my nut bread, loam hedge legacy, I call it, I'll trade recipes with you. Rosie agreed willingly. Oh, I love any sort of nut bread. Which one is yours? Matthias pointed over there by that big, marvelous pudding. It's nothing so grand, I fear, just a homely thing, but it's very tasty, and made to a real ancient recipe. Now what's your offering for our feast, Rosie? Point it out. Rather shyly, the hedgehog nodded toward the grand pudding that Matthias had been admiring. That's it, my harvest berry sunset pud. Matthias was astounded. Great seasons, it's my lucky day. I'd give anything to be able to make a pudding like that. Rosie shook his paw heartily. And I'd love to know how to make your loam hedge legacy nut bread. Aren't we both lucky? I'll go first. So loam hedge is the name of an old abbey that sank into the ground after some seismic activity or probably an earthquake. And the founder of Redwall came into Mossflower Wood from loam hedge, so it is truly an ancient recipe. And here it calls for flour, baking powder, salt, cayenne pepper, butter, milk, and chopped pecans. But you know, I've put a lot more nuts in it and even some dates because it's yummy. And a harvest berry sunset pud. Raspberries, blackberries, honey, and then bread. So a small loaf of bread with the crusts cut off and whipped cream for serving. So it's like a bread pudding with berries in the custard. The feast almost finished. Redwallers sat back contented, patting their stomachs and loosening belts. Durdlam, one of Friar Hugo's kitchen assistants, accompanied by little Bungo, began distributing small dock-leaf parcels from a trolley. Both he and Bungo were singing as they passed their delicacies out to one and all. Marms and sirs, moles and hers, do help yourselves to some. This seigneur was maked by us, 'tis very good, boy gum. Something munchy, crunchy, scrunchy, and they parcels be, some for all, and some for thee, and some for he and me. The Father Abbot opened his parcel and sampled its contents. Absolutely delicious. Who made this? What is it called? I'll keep the picture there. Durdlam tugged his snout respectfully. Me and Bungo make them, sir. They called Dibbuns Delight. The abbot munched some more. Dibbuns Delight. You should call them Abbot's Delight. I must have the recipe. Baby Bungo shook his head solemnly. Nay, sir abbot, us'ns bain't giving his secret away. 'Tis far too valuable. Cornflower came to the abbot's assistance. What a shame that Bungo and Durdlam won't give us their Dibbuns Delight recipe. Still, I know how hard it is to part with a secret like that. We wouldn't part with our secret recipe for Golden Hill pears, would we, Father? The abbot shook his head. Oh, dearie me, no. At the mention of Golden Hill pears, which was Bungo and Durdlam's favourite dessert, both moles cried out, We'll swappy recipe with thee. The abbot tapped his paws thoughtfully on the table for quite a long time before giving his answer. Oh, well, all right, you pair of young rogues. Bungo grinned from ear to ear. Thankee, sir, we be's only young rogues, but one day when us'ns growed up, we'll be all rogues like ye. Matameo winked at Bungo. Better than being a leaf out of the orchard, eh, Bungo? The little mole tucked into his last helping of Golden Hill pears left on the feasting table. Or anything be's better than that, sir. Hoy, aye, sir. And there are the recipes for Dibbuns Delight and Golden Hill pears. Dibbuns Delight is another crunchy dessert. Chopped mixed nuts, sugar, brown sugar, golden syrup, butter, and baking soda. You can probably put custard or ice cream on that. And Golden Hill pears, sugar, pears, and allspice, and of course some water as you stew the pears in the lovely sauce for dessert. There is our delicious pear, and I've sprinkled some cinnamon and allspice on it. So it's in the sugar syrup. That golden sugary syrup. I think some lemon juice in it makes a nice flavor. If you make this this one, you could top it with mascarpone or even ice cream. So, my friend, it has been relaxing and delightful to have you here today for a Redwall Autumn Feast. I hope you're nice and relaxed. And until next time, be good to yourself. Be kind to every beast. And, like Machimaeus and Matthias before him, be extraordinary.